It's definitely upsetting. I don't think nobody in our league should be facing any sort of racism, hurtful, disrespectful, hateful comments.
Clerk just dropped the most dangerous two letters in sports history, and the Indiana Fever are running out of time.
You talked about the mental challenges of last year going into this year, getting
Tuesday, felt a little sore. Texted our training staff.
Let's be completely honest with each other right now. When the most valuable player in women's basketball walks onto a podcast, looks into the camera with those ice-cold eyes, and tells the entire world that she is only under contract until next year, and then drops the word unless like a grenade rolling across the studio floor, you are not watching a casual media appearance. You are watching a calculated, surgical, absolutely deliberate power move from a generational talent who has had enough. And if the Indiana Fever front office doesn't wake up and smell the smoke pouring out of their own building, they are going to go down in sports history as the organization that held the golden ticket, the lottery win, the miracle gift that comes along once in 100 years, and set it on fire through nothing but pure ego, petty politics, and breathtaking organizational incompetence. Welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, buckle up. We do not do sugar-coated takes. We do not repeat PR-approved talking points. We follow the evidence, we follow the money. And today, we are following the trail of breadcrumbs that Caitlin Clark left behind. And friends, those breadcrumbs lead straight to the exit door of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Let's start with what actually happened on that Wednesday night in May 2026. The Indiana Fever suffered a major blow ahead of their game when superstar guard Caitlin Clark was ruled out against the Portland Fire because of a back injury. And critically, she was not listed on the team's official injury report the day before. Fox News. Let that sink in for a second. Not on the injury report, not a whisper, not a hint. Nothing. And then, following the team's pregame walkthrough, the Fever quietly scratched their franchise player from the lineup. Clark was scratched only about 100 minutes before the start of the game. Yahoo Sports. 100 minutes. The parking lots were already full. The concession stands were already slinging overpriced hot dogs. The jersey lines were already moving. And then, boom, no Caitlin Clark. Now, the official explanation from head coach Stephanie White was about as convincing as a bad alibi in a courtroom drama. White said before the game that Clark woke up with stiffness and soreness in her back, and when asked post-game whether the issue could be characterized as an injury, White said, "Her back is sore." That was it. That was the explanation given to thousands of fans who traveled from across the Midwest, booked hotel rooms, paid for parking, and handed over their hard-earned money to watch the player who single-handedly transformed women's basketball into a must-watch national event. And look, to be fair to the medical side of this story, this isn't the first time Clark's back has been a source of concern this season. The Fever star has been seen wearing a seating pad around her back on the bench several times this year, and went back into the locker room during Indiana's season-opening loss to the Dallas Wings to get her back adjusted. Sports Illustrated. Clark herself has been candid about it, saying her back gets out of alignment quickly and needs to be put back in place. So yes, there is a documented, real pre-existing back situation here. Nobody is denying that Clark's spine has been giving her grief. But here is where the story stops being a simple medical update and starts becoming something far more explosive. The WNBA collective bargaining agreement contains specific, non-negotiable language about when franchises must report injuries to the league. Independent analysts across basketball social media have documented that teams are required to submit their injury designations to the league office by 5 p.m. on the day before a scheduled game. That requirement exists for one reason: to protect fans from spending their money on a product they aren't going to receive. And the Portland Fire game was not the second night of a back-to-back, which is the only exception carved into that rule. The Fever had a full, clear day to assess their roster and file the proper paperwork. They chose not to. The question of what their official injury report actually said about Clark the day before that game is one that deserves a real public answer, not a press conference shrug. The financial consequence of that timeline is impossible to ignore. Every dollar spent on tickets, parking, food, and merchandise in that building on Wednesday night was spent under the assumption that number 22 would be stepping onto that floor. And attendance dropped significantly, with many empty seats at Gainbridge Fieldhouse once the news broke that Clark wouldn't play. The Spun fans on social media were furious. One supporter put it perfectly, saying that within 3 years, the WNBA and the Fever had completely squandered their golden goose moment, and that people had predicted this exact scenario 2 years ago. Another said plainly, "Nobody wants to see Stephanie White's system. They want to see Caitlin play the way that brought attention to the game in the first place." And the attendance numbers tell a story that the front office cannot spin their way out of. Indiana currently ranks 5th in average home attendance, and the number has fallen from where it was the previous year. Sports Illustrated, let the gravity of that fully register. The team built around the most famous basketball player on planet Earth, the athlete who turned road games into sellout events in cities that had never previously cared about women's basketball, is sitting 5th in the league in home attendance. In 2024, the Fever averaged 17,036 fans per game. Wikipedia. The drop since then is not subtle, and it is not a coincidence that is louder than anything any analyst could put into words. The Fever apparently noticed because what followed was one of the most unintentionally hilarious sequences in professional sports history. Rather than addressing the core organizational dysfunction driving people away, the marketing department apparently decided the solution was free pork tenderloin sandwiches, oil change giveaways, and raffling off living room furniture sets at halftime. No, that is not a joke. That is a real thing an elite professional sports franchise apparently decided to do to keep warm bodies in their building. When your response to declining attendance is to turn your arena into a game show set, you have already lost the argument. But all of this, the injury timing, the crowd concerns, the giveaway desperation, is merely the warm-up act for the main event. Because what Caitlin Clark did on the Post Moves podcast with Aliyah Boston and Candace Parker was not lighthearted teammate banter. It was a masterclass in leverage. Clark highlighted that she is only signed until 2027, adding the qualifier unless I sign my Epic. The Spun. For those who need a translation, the Epic is the Supermax extension exclusively available to players who earn all WNBA honors on their rookie deal. It is the largest contract the league can offer. And Caitlin Clark, the player who has averaged nearly 19 points and over 8 assists per game across her career, who dragged this franchise from irrelevance to cultural phenomenon, chose to frame her own future in Indianapolis as a conditional, not a certainty. She didn't say, when I sign it. She said, unless. One word. 3 syllables. Lives every ounce of frustration, calculation, and quiet fury that a player in her position is entitled to feel. In the world of professional sports, when a franchise cornerstone publicly refuses to commit to a maximum extension during a media appearance, every front office executive, every agent, and every league official hears the message loud and clear. I am watching. I am evaluating. And I have not yet seen enough to stay. The Simon family ownership group has a very narrow window to course correct before this entire situation becomes irreversible. The foundation of what made Indiana Fever basketball special, the electric atmosphere, the sold-out crowds, the national media attention, was not built by the front office brain trust. It was built by one woman with a three-point shot that defies the laws of physics and a competitive fire that refuses to be managed or diminished by anyone sitting in a comfortable office suite. The franchise has a choice to make, and the clock is ticking loudly. Either they build a modern, dynamic offensive system that puts the ball in the hands of their most dangerous weapon and surrounds her with an environment worthy of her talent, or they keep running the same slow, predictable half-court sets through role players while their superstar stands in the corner of practice with her arms crossed and her exit options quietly open. One of those paths leads to championships, sold-out arenas, and a legacy that defines a generation of women's basketball. The other path leads to being the answer to the saddest trivia question in sports history. Which organization fumbled the greatest gift the basketball gods ever handed them? Caitlin Clark is not bluffing. She is not being dramatic. She is doing exactly what any intelligent, supremely aware professional athlete should do in her position. She is holding the door open just wide enough to let everyone on the other side see the sunlight coming through. And if the Fever want her to close that door and commit to Indianapolis for the long haul, they need to give her a reason. Not a press release, not a furniture giveaway, not a carefully worded non-answer about back soreness. A real, structural, organizational reason to believe that this team is being built for her to win a championship, not managed by people more concerned with protecting their own authority than unleashing the most gifted player in the sport. The ball is in Indianapolis's court, and right now, they are dribbling it off their own foot. Now, I need to hear from the smartest basketball community on this platform. That is you, right down in that comment section. Do you think Caitlin Clark actually walks away from the Fever if this front office doesn't make serious changes? Is the attendance drop a direct message from the fan base? Or is it being overblown? And what would you do first if you were the Simon family sitting in that ownership suite right now? Drop your takes, your theories, and your unfiltered opinions below, because every single comment drives this conversation forward. If you want the most honest, fully researched, zero-fluff coverage of everything happening in women's basketball, slam that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on every notification so you never miss a single breakdown. We will see you in the next one.
Deep or that serious, just go out there and have fun and shoot it.